grandparents live in Cheyenne, Wyoming. They often take trips to the south during the winter months and ask me to house sit for them. I was a 16-year-old girl, so getting a place for myself and making some extra cash was awesome. Despite Grandpa's objection, Grandma said I could have visitors over anytime I wanted, which was so cool. They didn't give me any special chores to do, except to feed their bird and bring the mail and newspaper in every day. Aside from that, it was like I was getting paid on vacation. Their house was right next to a beautiful lake that had a picturesque hiking trail. I always took my dog, Pico, up there during my visits. My best friend, Clarita, and her boyfriend, Nick, came over to hang out with me one afternoon. They wanted to check out the hiking trail near the lake. The trail passed by some very old colonial-style houses, which people still lived in. One of them, however, had been deserted for years. It looked like a typical abandoned house, with broken windows, graffiti on the outside walls, and overgrown weeds. Nick was excited and wanted to check it out. I immediately rejected this idea, explaining that the house didn't look very stable, and it just didn't look safe at all. It was about 11 p.m. on a Saturday night that I was startled by the doorbell at my grandparents' house. It was Clarita and Nick. I greeted them outside. I noticed that they were wearing black sweatpants with matching hoodies. Nick was holding a huge flashlight. They clearly weren't here to chit-chat or spend a night. Their intention was to visit the scary-ass deserted house we saw earlier this week. I'm not sure how they convinced me, but I eventually agreed. But only if we didn't go too far inside, because it certainly had to be very dangerous. I ended up bringing my dog, Pico, for emotional support. We meandered down the trail towards the back of the deserted house. It was a complete blackout. If it were not for the glow of the flashlights, I doubt I could even see my hand in front of my face. I happened to notice that the back door was open slightly. Well, that's convenient. We didn't have to climb through a window. It was the complete mess that I thought it was going to be when we got inside. Surprisingly, the furniture and appliances were still there. There was an old, creepy recliner in the corner of the living room that still had the body imprint of the person who clearly used it a lot. Either the previous tenants had a lot of cats, or some animals got inside because the smell of urine was noxious. Garbage covered the floor, which also added to the putrid odor of the house. Clarita and I went upstairs to check out the bedrooms, while Nick was downstairs with my dog exploring the main floor. My dog was on a leash, and I told Nick to let him go after about 5 minutes, and he would run upstairs with me. 10 minutes passed, and my dog hadn't come upstairs yet. I figured that Nick forgot to let him go because of how excited he was to explore the main floor. Clarita and I entered a bedroom which had to be the master bedroom due to its size. There was a massive window that overlooked the backyard where we entered initially. There were gusts of wind that would blow through the rooms occasionally, which I attributed to the smashed windows throughout the house. One of the gusts of wind made the bedroom door slam shut behind us, which made us jump. After we calmed down, we decided to leave. I aimed my flashlight at the bedroom door, which had a broken glass window. I could make out a shadowy figure on the other side of the door, and I figured it was Nick. Clarita felt the same way and said, "Not gonna work, dummy." This is when the shadowy figure put its face through the window. The sudden realization that we were not alone in this house brought pure panic and terror to Clarita and me as we looked at each other wide-eyed. That was not Nick. This woman had pale gray skin, crazy-looking eyes, and white, disheveled hair. She looked very old, like a senior citizen. We bolted towards the massive bedroom window, where we could see what we hoped was Nick's flashlight illuminating the backyard area. We banged on the window and screamed Nick's name. I looked back at the old woman still sticking her head through the window opening, now with a maniacal smile. Slowly, she moved away and left. Nick bolted up the stairs to find us hysterically crying on the bedroom floor next to the massive window. He tried to calm us down, and Clarita yelled at him and told him that we needed to get the hell out of here. I asked where my dog was, and he looked confused. I let him go after 5 minutes like you told me to. My stomach dropped, and my heart was pounding like a jackhammer. I felt like I was going to find out something dreadful. When we left the bedroom, I noticed that the bathroom had a chair wedged onto the door handle, as if to barricade the entrance. We removed the chair and found Pico still on his leash and wagging his tail. The old woman had locked the dog in the bathroom. We got the hell out of that place. I have no idea who that old woman was, but I have horrible flashbacks of that old woman's maniacal smile every time I visit my grandparents.
A few miles from my residence was a rather eerie house that we commonly dubbed the Haunted House. I can't confirm whether it was actually haunted, but we gave it that name mainly because it was abandoned and neglected for several years, and its appearance was undeniably unsettling. The property was completely overgrown with weeds, all of its windows were shattered, and graffiti covered the walls. The house was just far away enough from the neighboring homes to create a sense of isolation. Me, Paul, and Clint were out driving late at night. It was a Friday night, and we had absolutely nothing to do. We were bored. I guess that's what happens around here when you're too young to do adult things and too old to do kid things. Anyway, Paul came up with this crazy idea of checking out the haunted house. I was totally for it, but Clint wanted nothing to do with it. Clint would do anything for food, so we got some McDonald's and I paid for his grub. We parked the Jeep about 5 minutes away from the haunted house so as to not draw any attention to us. Something really strange that I immediately noticed about the creepy neighborhood was that all the streetlights were out. It was weirdly dark. None of the houses had their exterior lights on. I would have thought that it was a ghost town had they not had cars parked in the driveway. The scene was scary as shit to say the least. Thankfully, there was a full moon out to light the way somewhat. We got out of the Jeep and walked towards the house, being as quiet as possible. We decided not to use our cell phone lights and walk through the dark. It was important not to draw any unwanted attention, or worse, get the cops called on us. I was about to jump through one of the broken windows to enter when Paul told me to wait. He walked up to the door, turned the knob, and I'll be damned. It opened with a loud creak. He looked at me with a big smile and we went in. Okay, I'm just gonna say it. The house smelled like ass. The noxious vapors of ammonia like cat pee and hot garbage overwhelmed me. Aside from all the trash on the floors and graffiti on the walls, the first floor surprisingly looked decent. This was a huge house. It looked like there were several empty rooms on the first floor. There was a lot of house to explore, so we decided to split up and cover more ground. I chose to go to the second floor and found that, unlike the first floor, there was a lot of exposed wall framing and wires hanging out of the ceiling. I decided to go back downstairs. I made my way down and ran into Paul and Clint. They were wide-eyed and pointed towards the hallway leading to the back of the house. Paul said that I needed to check out the back bedroom. Clint, on the other hand, was pleading for us to leave because of what they saw. Curiosity ate at me. and I convinced Clint that we could go back home after I explored that bedroom. When I first walked in, I was quite overwhelmed by the scene and the smell of urine and rot. Like the rest of the house, there was garbage everywhere. On the left corner of the room, there was a wet brown sack hanging on a hook by a chain. The walls had strange symbols in reddish-brown paint. At least I hoped that it was paint, because if I didn't know any better, I could be convinced that it was dried blood. I recognized two symbols, the anarchy symbol and the pentagram. In the center of the room was a small table with a silky black tablecloth and 4 melted candles. It looked like an altar of sorts. Paul, holding his hand to his face, started poking at the wet brown sack, trying to figure out what it was. I was focused on the altar while Clint was literally behind me holding my shirt. Suddenly, we heard the door at the front of the house creak open. All 3 of our heads shot up, looking at each other. We stood there completely still, holding our breaths.
I know you're in there. I already saw you. Come on out now.
I remember being scared for my life. All we did was stand there frozen. Paul, realizing the seriousness of the situation, snapped out of his frozen state and started signaling us towards a tiny closet in the corner of the room. We slowly closed the door, trying to be as quiet as possible. We were very uncomfortable, crammed tightly in the tiny closet. I could feel Clint quivering behind me. We heard heavy footsteps reach the door to the room.
I can hear you breathing. You must be very scared. You should be.
We were absolutely motionless, not one muscle twitch. The closet doorknob started to slowly turn. The door suddenly swung open. Paul, who was in front, quickly reacted by ramming the man and knocking him to the ground. We bolted out of the room, down the hallway, and out of the house. The tires of the Jeep screeched as we hastily departed. It was all chaotic while we were trying to catch our breath. We tried to rationalize what we saw and what we heard. I did not get a good look at the guy because I was focused on getting out of there. Clint said that he saw that the man was wearing a black robe. That's when Paul freaked us out and explained that the man dropped a small handgun when he rushed him. Years later, I'm still left wondering what the hell was going on in that house. Was it a weird cult or a hangout for the homeless? I'm clueless. The 3 of us are still good friends to this day. I've moved to Colorado since then, and I don't know what has happened to the house or who that creepy guy was. Even to this day, I still think of what could have happened if Paul didn't rush that guy when the closet door opened.